大家好，欢迎来到刚刚连线。In episode 3, we discussed what relationship the European Union wants to have with China. UK's recent about-face in terms of Huawei raises the question once more if European countries can get what they want. And I was asked what would happen in Europe if we assumed America succeeds in separating China and Europe. So today's topic is to dive into some scenarios including time, cost, and unwanted side effects. Let's face it, a new Cold War has already started, and the US pressures Europe to pick their side. The US ended its policy of engagement with China and moved to what they successively called 1. Decoupling, meaning decoupling the economies. 2. Containment, meaning impeding further development of China, as in the last Cold War with the USSR. And even before 1 and 2 are done, they already engage in 3. Rollback, meaning they want to actively decrease, again, China's economic, military, and political power. On June 23rd, we got explicit proof by Secretary of State Pompeo himself in his speech entitled Communist China and the Free World's Future, held with symbolic intention at the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum. Message: the era of Nixon's policy ends here and now. We reverse gear and expect the free world to do the same. Huawei 5G is just a prominent example for all 3 strategies from decoupling over containment to rollback. The technical analysis by the close ally UK in January 2020 had found that it could manage the risk and use Huawei at least in the commercially valuable access network of base stations. On top of already threatening UK to withhold intelligence data, the US now threatens global component makers using US machines, software or patents, etc., not to supply Huawei anymore with their own products. At that point, the UK caved in. They will no longer buy Huawei and eliminate existing equipment successively until 2027. Such interfering in business of 2 non-US third-party contract partners is a repeating pattern. Ask European countries plus Iran, European countries plus Russia, Turkey plus Russia, etc. The US makes a national law which is then applied globally. Here the so-called Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. Europe upholds that no nation can make laws beyond its own borders unless they are joint international law. The US, on the other hand, does not even subject itself to the International Court of Justice in The Hague, accepting its rulings only if it pleases and vetoing sanctions against the US in the World Security Council. In their mind, they can order around any other nation, while the whole world together can't sanction the US. But what would it mean for Europe if the bullying proves successful, as was the case with UK and Huawei? The short answer: nobody really knows. And far too few are even trying to think it through. Europe doesn't even want to go there, so any plans would only be a contingency. Worse, work on them would be interpreted as giving in. Not if we decouple, but only when and how. Even the US doesn't really have a long-term plan of the end game. Right now, they only wanted to avoid China becoming a regional hegemon in Asia at all cost. Dealing with that cost later seems to be as thought through as the exit strategies for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq after 9/11. Not at all, or based on short-sighted assumptions. Sometimes the US cowboy shoots into its own foot, then points, and then draws. In any case, even the intellectuals like John Mearsheimer think mainly about how to extend US dominance for another generation or so, definitely not the long-term game China is playing. US allies always share that cost too. For example, Europe deals with the refugees from the US Middle East politics. Here are some ideas I hear in Germany and France for the future and my short opinion about them. 1. COVID-19 exposed strong dependence on China for PPE and generic pharmaceuticals. Cost is the reason, and technologically they could and should be brought back. However, I think it's probably more efficient to have stockpiles instead of standby factories. That would already be a big improvement. The US did not replenish its stockpiles of N95 masks after the H1N1 pandemic of 2009. Now we all paid a high price for such negligence. 2. Ecologists argue we should develop more local supply chains for reasons of sustainability. Right, but most Europeans want everything year-round at the lowest cost. Cleaner container ship propulsions and the rail link from China to Europe seem also promising to me. 3. Bring jobs back home also sounds good at first sight, but people totally underestimate the following purchasing power decrease. Prices increase significantly if products are made in high-cost countries. What local employment is created if nobody can afford to buy the products? Example, the biggest critic of Trump's steel tariffs was the US automotive industry. What happens if around 75% of Walmart merchandise, for example, is made in China? More recently, the relocation targets are seen instead mainly in Asia, like Vietnam, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. China remains influential and no Western jobs are created. 4. Already started is a closer eye on high tech. The level playing field, evoked in episode 2, also means restricting Chinese access to technology through M&A to similar degree as China does vice versa. I have witnessed many times firsthand that even without M&A, greedy companies with short-term managements will continue to agree to transfer of technology in exchange for more sales. However, the days are gone in which lacking access to technology automatically slowed China down. Once China takes the lead in an industry, the tables are turned. That is why Made in China 2025 strategy is so scary to the West. And once more, Huawei's 5G is a role model. Very concretely, the responsible UK Secretary of State for Digital, Oliver Dowden, estimates the UK government's policy will now set back 5G rollout by up to 3 years and a cost of up to £2 billion extra. In Germany, the real question is, what will be based on 5G and therefore also arrive late? I'm generally careful with hyped topics such as 5G. But what if Industry 4.0 or autonomous driving really take off and 5G's real-time speed is the key enabler? That hurts not only the end user, but more importantly, German key industries. As of now, German Chancellor Angela Merkel is said to be reluctant to follow UK's course. Most observers fear potential retaliatory measures by China against our automotive industry. But I believe Merkel is more worried about the general development of German industry itself, including automotive, if 5G rollout is lagging behind again. 4G rollout is already abysmal in Germany. UK and US, with huge service sectors, might feel less affected. This is just one example of the endless ramifications, many of which might not even be known yet, leave alone appreciated. Deutsche Bank estimates that the divide in tech will cost the US alone $3,500 billion over 5 years, as the sum of loss of domestic Chinese demand, costs of shifting global production chains currently located in China, and higher operating costs due to the emergence of two divergent tech standards. Annualized, that is about as much as the growth of the US economy along the pre-COVID trend line. In summary, the structures at stake took 40 years to build. The final steady state is largely unknown, leave alone the transition timing and cost. In the wider picture, there are further knock-on effects. The outside pressure could advance European integration, increasing its weight. Today, the EU, as the largest economic bloc, has the least political weight. People mobility will be greatly reduced, so communication as basis for understanding and trust would suffer. Global institutions like the World Trade Organization will function poorly, be duplicated in the blocs, or abandoned altogether. Economic ties are the best insurance against any kind of armed conflict. Disengagement brings therefore new risks. Defense spendings will continue to soar as everybody feels threatened by the other side's defense. A European army with a shared French nuclear shield is envisioned by President Macron, but strongly disapproved by America. Most importantly, at the global level, humanity will deprive itself of any realistic means to tackle real global problems, especially climate change, but also organized crime or pandemics. Every non-political issue will get politicized. But nature, for example, does not care about political convictions and power plays. The selfishness of the US strategy reminds of the school bully who is not very bright, but by far the strongest. What happens to school bullies? Well, for once, nobody loves them. So-called soft power takes decades to build and was a US asset. It can be squandered very fast. A nation forced to follow is no loyal subject. Europe will try to sit on the fence as long as possible and hedge its bets. It is in China's hands to acquire more soft power by simply persistently be a more responsible global citizen than the United States. Currently, that bar couldn't be much lower. So now, it's up to you to connect the pieces. 再见。